3 days after my father's funeral, we gathered in his oak-paneled study. The lawyer handed us each a copy of the will. Everything seemed standard, until he flipped to page 17. Per Thomas Bennett's instructions, he said, a trust fund of $5 million is to be given to Miss Isabel Reynolds and her daughter, Emily. Mom's face turned pale. Clara shot up. Who the hell is Isabel? The lawyer simply adjusted his glasses. Your father's longtime beneficiary.
Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more jaw-dropping real-life stories like this. Trust me, this one is going to leave you speechless. Now let's get into it.
My name is Gary Bennett, and my life changed forever the day my father's will was read. I always thought I knew who my father was. A powerful real estate mogul, a man who built an empire from the ground up. He was the kind of man who demanded respect the moment he walked into a room, the type who could close million-dollar deals over a single lunch. People feared him, some admired him, but I just wanted to be seen by him. Growing up, my father made it clear that I was never his priority. My younger sister, Clara, was his golden child, his perfect little princess. She had him wrapped around her finger in ways I could never understand. No matter how many hours I spent studying, no matter how hard I worked to prove myself worthy of his attention, I was always an afterthought. If Clara got a new car, I got a used one. If she needed money, she got a blank check, but if I asked for help, I got a lecture about earning my way. Still, I believed that one day my efforts would pay off. I was convinced that if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself capable enough, my father would finally acknowledge me. That illusion shattered the day of the will reading. 3 days after his funeral, we all gathered in his grand study, a room filled with heavy mahogany furniture and the scent of aged whiskey still lingering in the air. The lawyer, Mr. Whitlock, sat at my father's desk, flipping through pages of legal documents with an unreadable expression. My mother, Eleanor, sat to my right, silent, her fingers gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. Clara sat to my left, already smirking, as if she knew something the rest of us didn't. Whitlock cleared his throat and began reading. Most of it was expected: the division of assets, the company shares, the investments. My father had left Clara a massive sum of money, along with ownership of key properties in our real estate business. My mother received a generous trust, ensuring she would never struggle financially. And me? I was given a modest inheritance, enough to live comfortably, but nowhere near what I had expected, nowhere near what I had earned. I sat there in stunned silence, my father's final insult ringing in my ears. But then, the lawyer turned to page 17, and that's when everything fell apart. A trust fund of $5 million is to be given to Miss Isabel Reynolds and her daughter, Emily. My mother let out a sharp gasp. Clara's smirk vanished. The room plunged into dead silence. Who the hell is Isabel Reynolds? Clara demanded. The lawyer didn't even flinch. He simply adjusted his glasses and replied, your father's longtime beneficiary. That was the moment my family shattered. My father had a secret life, a second family, and not only had he been supporting them for years, but he had also ensured that Isabel and Emily would be taken care of long after he was gone. As if that wasn't bad enough, Emily was 12 years old, the same age Clara had been when I first saw my father arguing with a strange woman outside his office. It hit me like a freight train. That woman, that little girl, it had been them all along. I should have felt anger, betrayal, but what I felt most was humiliation. My entire life, I had fought for my father's approval, only to realize he had given it freely to someone else. The funeral had barely ended before Isabel showed up at our door. She wasn't some young, manipulative gold digger like Clara assumed. No, she was poised, confident. She walked into our house like she belonged there, and why wouldn't she? She had been just as much a part of my father's life as we had. Emily stood beside her, shy, clutching her mother's hand. But there was something painfully familiar about her. The same sharp cheekbones, the same dark hair, the same damn eyes. She was my sister, my mother, who had spent years drowning in wine bottles and fake smiles, finally snapped. She slapped Isabel across the face and screamed at her to get out. But Isabel? She just took a deep breath, pulled a stack of papers from her bag, and set them on the table. Letters, bank statements, photographs, proof that my father had been planning to leave us all behind. My father had been preparing to move to Costa Rica with Isabel and Emily. He had secretly sold off parts of the company, siphoning money into offshore accounts. The business, the one I had sacrificed so much for, was drowning in debt. And Clara? She knew. She had been helping him cover it up. For years, she had played the role of the perfect daughter, pretending to be clueless, all while knowing that my father was preparing to abandon us. And in return, he had promised her control of the company. Everything that had ever happened in my family had been built on lies. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted justice. Whitlock, still composed, cleared his throat. "There's something else you should know," he said, flipping to another section of the will. "Your father took out substantial loans against the company." My stomach dropped. "How substantial?" I asked, though I already knew the answer wouldn't be good. "Massive," he said bluntly. "Enough that if this will is contested, the company will collapse under debt." Clara paled. "That's impossible. Dad told me everything was mine." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Guess he lied to you too." I wasn't just angry at my father anymore. I was furious with Clara. She knew. She had known about Isabel, about the money, about the lies, and she had done nothing. Worse, she had helped cover it all up. I stormed into my father's office, tearing through drawers, cabinets, anything that could hold a clue. That's when I found it. A deed to a house in Costa Rica under Isabel's name. Old business records showing money funneled into offshore accounts. The life insurance policy. The one my mother and I had never known existed. He had planned everything, down to the moment he would leave us. I confronted Mr. Whitlock again. "So, let me guess. If we contest the will, the company collapses. But if we let things slide, Clara walks away with everything, and Isabel gets her millions." He hesitated. "Not exactly," he admitted. "There's more." That's when he dropped the final bombshell. If the will was disputed, all assets, including Isabel's trust, would be frozen pending investigation. And without those funds, everything would crumble. Clara was livid. "Dad said I was going to run the company," she snapped. "He promised me. Just like he promised Mom he'd be faithful?" I shot back. "Like he promised me he'd be proud?" She had no response. That was the moment I saw it. The flicker of doubt in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize the truth. Maybe, for the first time, she understood what Dad had really done to us. I should have walked away. I should have let it go. But I couldn't. I had spent too many years living under my father's shadow, and I refused to let his lies dictate my life any longer. So I did what I had to do. I leaked everything. I sent financial records to the IRS, forwarded documents to our investors, made sure every fraudulent transaction my father had ever made was exposed. Within weeks, the empire my father had spent his life building collapsed. His fraud made headlines. The IRS seized our assets. Isabel and Emily? Their $5 million trust fund? Frozen due to unpaid taxes. Nobody won. Clara, in a desperate attempt to save herself, tried to fight for control. She begged the board to let her fix things. The investors pulled out. Her fiancé dumped her the moment he realized she was about to lose everything. She sold her car just to pay her legal fees. My mother? The weight of it all finally crushed her. She checked herself into rehab. I wasn't sure if it was for grief or guilt, but I didn't care anymore. I cut ties with both of them. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. A year later, I got an email. The subject line? Costa Rica urgent. I clicked. The message was short. The beach house is gone, swept away in a storm. Dad's retirement plan? Wiped off the map. The company? A ghost of what it used to be. And Clara? Broke, alone. She tried reaching out, tried to convince me to help her rebuild. I never replied. Instead, I took our family's story and sold it to a true crime documentary. Let the world see who my father really was. He once told me, reputation is everything. Now, his name was just another scandal on Netflix. Hope it was worth it, Dad.
What do you think? If you were in Gary's place, how would you have handled this shocking betrayal? Let me know in the comments. And if you love twisted real-life stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.